Did you know that Donald Trump was sent to a military academy at just 13 years old? His parents believed he needed more discipline, so they enrolled him at the New York Military Academy. Imagine being a teenager, waking up to the sound of a bugle, marching in formation, and following strict rules every single day. This early experience shaped Trump's personality, his confidence, his drive, and even his approach to leadership. But how did a young boy from Queens, New York, transform into one of the most polarizing and influential figures in modern history? Today, we'll explore his journey, his language, and the way his words have played a role in business, politics, and media. Stay tuned as we break it all down in simple, conversational English. Right here on Talk Blaze. Donald Trump is a name that almost everyone knows. Whether you see him as a successful businessman, a reality TV star, or a controversial politician, one thing is clear. He has been a dominant figure in American history. Born in Queens, New York in 1946, Trump grew up in a wealthy family. His father, Fred Trump, was a real estate developer who built houses and apartments across New York City. From a young age, Donald was ambitious. He wanted to be more than just his father's son. He wanted to make a name for himself. After attending the Wharton School of Business, Trump entered the real estate world. In the 1980s, he built skyscrapers, hotels, and casinos, making the Trump name a symbol of luxury and power. His famous building, Trump Tower, became a landmark in New York City. But Trump wasn't just a businessman, he was a master of self-promotion. He loved being in the spotlight. In 2004, he became the star of The Apprentice, a reality TV show where he played the role of a tough, no-nonsense boss. His catchphrase, "You're fired." The show made him even more famous, showing his confidence, his direct way of speaking, and his ability to command attention. But Trump's greatest challenge was yet to come. In 2015, he shocked the world by announcing his candidacy for president. Many people laughed at the idea. A businessman, a TV star, running the country. Yet Trump connected with millions of Americans. He spoke in simple, straightforward language. His words were bold, unfiltered, and different from traditional politicians. But with great power comes great controversy. His presidency was one of the most divisive in modern history. Some people saw him as a strong leader who put America first. Others viewed him as unpredictable and polarizing. His language, his tone, and his choice of words often made headlines. But what exactly made his communication style so unique? While Donald Trump became one of the most recognizable figures in business and politics, his path to success was not easy. Many people think he was simply born rich and had an easy life. But even with his father's wealth, Trump had to prove himself. In the early 1970s, Trump joined his father's real estate business, which focused on building apartments in Brooklyn and Queens. But Donald had bigger ambitions. He didn't want to build small apartment buildings. He wanted to create iconic skyscrapers in Manhattan, the heart of New York City. But there was a problem. Manhattan's real estate world was elite, and many developers saw Trump as an outsider. He was young, he was aggressive, and some people didn't take him seriously. Banks were hesitant to lend him money, and older businessmen didn't trust his bold, flashy style. His first major project, the Grand Hyatt Hotel, was a huge risk. He had to negotiate with the city, secure loans, and prove that he could handle a multi-million-dollar deal. But he did it. And when the hotel opened in 1980, it was a success. Trump had made his mark. But success didn't mean smooth sailing. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Trump made some bad investments. He built Trump Taj Mahal, a massive casino in Atlantic City, but it struggled financially. His company went into debt, and by the early 90s, Trump faced bankruptcy. Many people thought he was finished. His name was everywhere, but now it was connected to failure. The media questioned if he had been too ambitious, too reckless. Was Donald Trump a business genius, or was he just someone who took huge risks and hoped for the best? But Trump didn't give up. He restructured his businesses, sold some of his properties, and rebuilt his brand. And most importantly, he learned a valuable lesson. Failure was just another step toward success. He would go on to reinvent himself many times. But how did he use his language, his branding, and his media strategy to turn failure into opportunity? Donald Trump was down, but he was never out. After his financial struggles in the early 1990s, many people thought he was finished. But Trump had something powerful: his name. Even when his businesses faced trouble, the Trump brand still represented success, wealth, and luxury. By the late 1990s, Trump rebuilt his empire. He launched new real estate projects, including Trump World Tower and Trump International Hotel and Tower. His buildings had a distinctive style: grand, golden, and opulent. Whether you loved it or thought it was too flashy, there was no denying one thing: Trump knew how to market himself. But perhaps his biggest breakthrough wasn't in real estate, it was in television. In 2004, Trump became the star of The Apprentice, a reality show where contestants competed for a job in his company. The show was an instant hit. Each week, millions of viewers watched as Trump tested the skills of young business professionals, challenging them to sell, strategize, and negotiate. And of course, the most famous moment in every episode: the boardroom scene, where Trump pointed at a contestant and said, "You're fired." That phrase became a cultural sensation. It showed how powerful and direct Trump's communication style was. He didn't use complicated words, he got straight to the point. As his fame grew, so did his ambitions. Trump had spent decades building, selling, and entertaining. But in 2015, he made his boldest move yet. He announced that he was running for President of the United States. His campaign was different. He didn't speak like a politician. He didn't use carefully planned speeches with complex language. Instead, he spoke in short, simple, and powerful sentences. He used phrases that were easy to remember, like "Make America Great Again." His words resonated with many people who felt left out of traditional politics. At first, many experts and journalists didn't take him seriously. But Trump proved them wrong. He dominated the news cycle, used social media to his advantage, and connected with millions of voters. And in 2016, he did what almost no one thought was possible: he won. He became the 45th president of the United States. But his presidency would be just as controversial as his campaign. Some people saw him as a strong leader who spoke his mind. Others viewed him as a divisive figure who disrupted traditional politics. So what made his communication style so powerful? How did he use language to influence, persuade, and even shock the world? The night of the 2016 election was a shock to the world. Many polls had predicted a Hillary Clinton victory. But as the results came in, it became clear: Donald Trump was winning. How did he do it? His campaign was unlike anything seen before. He avoided traditional political strategies and instead relied on massive rallies, direct social media engagement, and an unfiltered way of speaking. While other candidates used scripted speeches, Trump spoke freely, often repeating simple, memorable phrases like "drain the swamp" and "build the wall." His message was clear, strong, and direct. As key states like Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania turned red, the impossible became reality. At around 2:30 a.m., Hillary Clinton conceded, and Donald Trump took the stage as America's next president. It was a moment that changed history. Donald Trump's journey from businessman to reality TV star to president was nothing short of historic. He challenged political norms, changed how leaders communicate, and left a lasting impact on American politics. Whether you see him as a visionary or a controversial figure, one thing is certain: he transformed the way people engage with politics, media, and power. His influence will be debated for years to come. What does his legacy mean for the future? Only time will tell. That's it for today's episode of Talk Blaze. We've explored the rise of Donald Trump, his unique communication style, and how he shaped modern politics. Love him or hate him, his impact is undeniable. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow and share. Talk Blaze with friends who want to learn English through real stories. And don't forget to tune in next time for more immersive, engaging lessons. Until then, keep listening, keep learning, and stay blazing forward.
She was never meant to be queen. Born into a royal family that never expected her to rule, Queen Elizabeth II's rise to the throne was unexpected, sudden, and filled with pressure. At just 25 years old, she inherited the British crown after the shocking death of her father, King George VI. And from that moment, she carried the weight of an entire empire on her shoulders. For over 70 years, she ruled through wars, scandals, and global transformations, outlasting world leaders, navigating political turmoil, and keeping the monarchy alive in a rapidly changing world. But how did a quiet, duty-bound young princess become one of the most powerful and enduring figures in history? What sacrifices did she make to uphold tradition in a modern world that constantly challenged her? This is the story of Queen Elizabeth II, a woman who faced crisis after crisis, yet remained unshaken, proving that true power isn't just about ruling, it's about enduring. When Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor was born in 1926, no one expected her to become queen. As the daughter of Prince Albert, the Duke of York, she was far from the direct line of succession. Her childhood was one of quiet privilege, shaped by royal tradition, but free from the pressures of ruling. But everything changed in 1936. That year, her uncle, King Edward VIII, abdicated the throne in a scandal that shook Britain. He chose love over duty, marrying Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee, and stepping down as king. In his place, Elizabeth's father became King George VI, a reluctant ruler who never expected to wear the crown. And just like that, young Elizabeth was thrust into a future she never asked for. From that moment on, she was no longer just a princess. She was the heir to the British throne. Her father worked tirelessly to prepare her, knowing that one day she would inherit the weight of the monarchy. But no one expected that day to come so soon. In 1952, at just 25 years old, Elizabeth's world changed forever. While on a royal tour in Kenya, she received the devastating news. Her father had died suddenly. The young princess, still grieving, now had a nation to lead. With little experience and immense pressure, she returned to Britain as Queen Elizabeth II. Her coronation in 1953 marked the beginning of a reign that would become the longest in British history. But ruling a nation wasn't just about wearing a crown. It was about navigating an era of profound change. Over the next 7 decades, she faced wars, political upheavals, royal scandals, and the decline of the British Empire. Through it all, she remained a symbol of stability, duty, and resilience. But behind the carefully maintained image of the monarchy, her rule was tested time and time again. Would she be able to keep the monarchy alive in a world that was rapidly leaving the past behind? As queen, Elizabeth II faced one of the greatest challenges any monarch had ever seen: keeping the British monarchy relevant in a rapidly changing world. The empire her ancestors once ruled was shrinking as country after country gained independence. The days of unquestioned royal authority were over. Now, survival depended on adaptation. Throughout the 20th century, she navigated political turmoil, Cold War tensions, and shifting public opinion. She met with world leaders from Winston Churchill to John F. Kennedy, from Nelson Mandela to Vladimir Putin, becoming a quiet yet powerful force in global diplomacy. But her greatest tests came not from politics, but from within her own family. Scandals rocked the royal household. The troubled marriage and eventual divorce of Prince Charles and Princess Diana became a public spectacle, exposing deep cracks within the monarchy. When Diana tragically died in 1997, the Queen faced intense criticism for her silence, a rare moment where the public questioned her leadership. Yet she endured. Over time, she modernized the monarchy, allowing greater transparency, embracing media, and working to rebuild the public's trust. Through every crisis, she remained steadfast, proving that survival wasn't about power. It was about resilience. But as the world continued to change, could the monarchy keep up? By the 21st century, Queen Elizabeth II had become more than just a monarch. She was a global icon. She had outlasted world wars, political revolutions, and changing public attitudes. But the challenges didn't stop. Now, the very institution she had dedicated her life to was being questioned like never before. The royal family faced growing scrutiny. The younger generation saw the monarchy as outdated, a relic of the past. Scandals continued. Prince Andrew's ties to Jeffrey Epstein led to his public downfall, and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's dramatic exit from royal life exposed deep fractures within the family. The media, once controlled by royal protocol, now dictated public perception. For the first time, the Queen's leadership faced open criticism in a world driven by instant news and social media. Yet, Elizabeth remained steady. She had faced crises before, and she knew the key to survival: silence, composure, and endurance. While politicians came and went, while royal scandals flared and faded, she remained the one constant in British life. Even those who questioned the monarchy couldn't deny her influence. As the years passed and her health declined, speculation grew. What would happen when she was gone? Could the monarchy survive without her? The institution she had upheld for over 70 years now faced its biggest test: a future without Queen Elizabeth II. In her final years, Queen Elizabeth II remained as devoted as ever to her duty. Despite her advancing age, she continued to attend public engagements, meet with world leaders, and uphold the traditions of the monarchy. Even in moments of personal loss, she remained unshaken. When her husband, Prince Philip, passed away in 2021, she sat alone at his funeral, a powerful image of duty over personal grief. But time was catching up. Her health became a growing concern, and the question of succession loomed. As Britain faced economic challenges, political instability, and a changing global landscape, the monarchy's future became uncertain. Would the institution she had protected for decades endure without her? Then, on September 8, 2022, the news came. Queen Elizabeth II had passed away at the age of 96. Her reign had spanned generations, wars, and cultural revolutions, and now Britain faced a reality it hadn't seen in over 70 years: a world without its queen. With Queen Elizabeth II's passing, an era ended. For over 70 years, she had been Britain's anchor, a symbol of stability through wars, scandals, and global transformations. Now, the monarchy stood at a crossroads. Would it continue to hold relevance in a modern world, or would her death mark the beginning of its decline? Her eldest son, King Charles III, immediately ascended the throne. But despite his lifelong preparation, his reign faced skepticism. Public support for the monarchy had weakened, and younger generations questioned its place in society. Could Charles command the same respect and devotion as his mother? As Britain mourned, the world watched. Her funeral was one of the most viewed events in history, a testament to her lasting impact. Even those who doubted the monarchy couldn't ignore the weight of her legacy. She had ruled longer than any monarch in British history, and now the question remained: could the institution survive without her? As Britain moved forward, the absence of Queen Elizabeth II was deeply felt. She had been more than a ruler. She was a constant, a living connection to history. Now, the monarchy faced its biggest challenge, proving it could exist without her. King Charles III took the throne, but his leadership was met with uncertainty. Could he modernize the monarchy while preserving its traditions? Would the people accept him as they had his mother? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: Queen Elizabeth II's reign had left an unshakable mark on history. Whether the monarchy thrived or faded, her legacy would never be forgotten. Have you ever felt the fear of missing out, FOMO? That anxiety that if you don't act now, you'll lose your chance. Maybe it's a sale, a job opportunity, or even a social event. But imagine if FOMO wasn't about missing a party, but missing out on power. Imagine if one man's fear of being forgotten, overlooked, or denied greatness led to one of the darkest chapters in human history. This is the story of Adolf Hitler. To understand why Adolf Hitler rose to power, we have to go back, way back, to a time of uncertainty, humiliation, and desperation. Hitler didn't rise overnight, and he didn't do it alone. His success was the result of Germany's struggles, people's fears, and his own relentless ambition. In 1918, Germany lost World War I, and when the war ended, so did the country's pride, economy, and stability. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, was like a death sentence for Germany. It forced the country to accept full responsibility for the war, a humiliation known as the War Guilt Clause, pay massive reparations, a debt so large that it crippled the economy, give up huge amounts of land to other nations, reduce its military, leaving it weak and vulnerable. Germany, once a mighty empire, was now broken, angry, and desperate. The people felt betrayed. How could their once great country be in ruins? Many refused to believe Germany had truly lost. Some even spread the idea that the army had been stabbed in the back by politicians and traitors. This was the perfect breeding ground for extremism. After the war, Germany's economy collapsed. People lost their jobs, their savings became worthless, and starvation spread. By the early 1920s, Germany was suffering from hyperinflation. Imagine waking up one day and finding out that the money in your pocket could barely buy a loaf of bread. The next day, you'd need a wheelbarrow full of cash just to afford a meal. At the same time, the government was weak. The Weimar Republic, Germany's democratic system, was struggling to hold the country together. Political parties were fighting, arguing, and failing to solve problems. People were looking for a strong leader, someone who could restore order and make Germany powerful again. Hitler saw an opportunity. He knew what the people wanted to hear. He promised hope, strength, and revenge. He told the struggling workers, the humiliated soldiers, and the unemployed youth that they deserved better. He didn't just offer speeches. He offered someone to blame. The Treaty of Versailles is the enemy. The politicians betrayed you. The Jews, communists, and outsiders are destroying Germany. Hitler's ability to tap into anger and fear made him a powerful speaker. His words were more than just words. They were a rallying cry. And with every speech, every newspaper article, and every carefully crafted piece of propaganda, more people believed in him. Hitler joined the German Workers' Party in 1919, a small, radical group. Within just a few years, he transformed it into the Nazi Party, National Socialist German Workers' Party. The party's message was simple. Germany must be strong again. Germany needs a leader, not weak politicians. The enemies of Germany must be eliminated. With violent supporters known as the SA, stormtroopers, Hitler used fear and intimidation to silence his opponents. Riots, street fights, assassinations. Chaos was everywhere, and many Germans started to believe that only a strong hand could fix it. In 1923, Hitler attempted to seize power by force in what became known as the Beer Hall Putsch. His plan? March into Munich, overthrow the government, and take control. But the plan failed. Hitler was arrested and sent to prison. Most people would have given up. But Hitler? He used his time in jail to prepare. There, he wrote Mein Kampf, a book outlining his vision for Germany. He realized that to truly gain power, he needed to do it legally. Then came 1929. The world fell into the Great Depression, and Germany was hit the hardest. Unemployment soared. Businesses collapsed. The German people had already suffered through war, inflation, and humiliation. Now they had nothing left. This was Hitler's moment. He offered jobs, stability, a future. People believed him. In the 1932 elections, Hitler's Nazi Party became the largest in Germany. 1 year later, in 1933, he was appointed chancellor. It only took a few months for him to destroy democracy completely and declare himself Germany's absolute ruler. This wasn't just Hitler's rise. It was a perfect storm of crisis, anger, and lost hope. And Hitler knew exactly how to take advantage of it. Hitler's rule turned deadly the moment he gained absolute power. But key events marked his descent into full-scale brutality and war. 1. The Night of the Long Knives, 1934. Hitler saw threats even within his own party. To secure control, he ordered the mass execution of SA leaders and political rivals, proving no one was safe. 2. The Nuremberg Laws, 1935. Nazis passed racist laws, stripping Jews of citizenship and rights. Anti-Semitism became state policy, setting the stage for worse atrocities. 3rd Kristallnacht, 1938. A nationwide attack on Jewish businesses, homes, and synagogues. It was clear. Violence wasn't stopping. It was escalating. 4th World War II begins, 1939. When Hitler invaded Poland, the world realized his hunger for power would not stop. War, genocide, millions of deaths. The darkest chapter had begun. By April 1945, Hitler's empire was collapsing. The Allies had crushed Germany's forces, and the Soviet army was closing in on Berlin. Bombs rained down, streets burned, and Nazi leaders began to flee or surrender. Hitler, now a paranoid shell of his former self, retreated into his bunker beneath Berlin. He refused to accept defeat, issuing hopeless orders to armies that no longer existed. On April 30th, 1945, realizing all was lost, Hitler took his own life alongside his wife, Eva Braun. His body was burned to prevent capture. Days later, Germany surrendered. The man who sought absolute power, who feared insignificance, died alone in the darkness, leaving behind only destruction. His fear-driven ambition had led not to greatness, but to ruin and infamy. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. The rise and fall of Adolf Hitler is more than just a story. It's a warning, a reminder of how fear, manipulation, and unchecked ambition can drive the world into darkness. Hitler's journey to power wasn't a sudden coup or a military takeover. He didn't seize control overnight. Instead, he played on people's fears, exploited their desperation, and twisted the system from within. He convinced ordinary citizens that he was their only hope, that their problems were caused by outsiders, and that violence was the path to greatness. The most chilling part? Millions followed him, not because they were evil, but because they believed in his promises. They wanted a strong leader. They wanted security. And in their desire for a better future, they ignored the warning signs until it was too late. This pattern isn't unique to Hitler. Throughout history and even today, leaders use fear to manipulate people. They create enemies, spread propaganda, and present themselves as the only solution. They silence opposition, rewrite history, and demand loyalty, not through respect, but through fear. So, what can we learn? Never let fear control your judgment. Fear makes people desperate, and desperation makes them blind to the dangers right in front of them. Question those who promise simple answers to complex problems. Scapegoating a group, a country, or a community is always a red flag. Understand history. The more we learn from the past, the less likely we are to repeat it. In the end, Hitler didn't just destroy others, he destroyed himself. His hunger for power left Germany in ruins, cost millions of lives, and made his name synonymous with evil. His story is a reminder. Power built on fear never lasts, and those who rise through hatred always fall. Have you ever felt the weight of a single moment? The kind of moment where history holds its breath, where the world stops to watch? Imagine standing on the edge of the unknown, a place where no human has ever stepped before. One wrong move, and there's no way back. This is the story of Apollo 11. To understand how humanity first walked on the moon, we have to go back to a time of competition, ambition, and an unrelenting dream to go beyond Earth. The 20th century was a time of competition, ambition, and unrelenting progress. But after World War II, the world was split in two, the United States and the Soviet Union. Two superpowers, two ideologies, and one goal: dominate the final frontier. It all began in 1957, when the Soviet Union shocked the world by launching Sputnik 1, the first satellite in history. A tiny metal sphere, no bigger than a beach ball. But its beeping signal echoed like a warning. It meant one thing: the Soviets were ahead. The U.S. scrambled to catch up. But just 4 years later, in 1961, the Soviets struck again, this time with a man. Yuri Gagarin became the first human in space, orbiting Earth in Vostok 1. America was falling behind, and the pressure was on. The response? A promise that seemed impossible. On September 12, 1962, President John F. Kennedy stood before a crowd and declared, "We choose to go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard." The challenge was set. America would not just send a man to space, they would land him on the moon. NASA launched the Apollo program, pouring resources into cutting-edge science, daring pilots and engineers working around the clock. The Mercury and Gemini missions paved the way, proving humans could survive in space. But the Soviet Union wasn't slowing down either. By 1965, they had completed the first spacewalk. In 1966, they landed an unmanned probe on the moon. It was a race against time. Then, in 1967, tragedy struck. Apollo 1, America's first manned moon mission, ended in disaster when a fire broke out in the command module, killing all 3 astronauts. It was a devastating loss, but NASA refused to give up. They rebuilt, redesigned, and pushed forward. By 1968, Apollo 8 made history as the first crewed spacecraft to orbit the moon, giving humanity its first glimpse of Earth from deep space. The finish line was near. Finally, on July 16, 1969, with the world watching, Apollo 11 launched toward destiny. The race was over. The next step, making history on the moon. The spacecraft chosen for this daring journey was Apollo 11, a 3-part vessel designed to carry 3 astronauts to the moon and back. Inside were 3 pioneers: Neil Armstrong, the cool-headed commander; Buzz Aldrin, the precision pilot; Michael Collins, the man who would stay in orbit, ensuring their way home. On July 16, 1969, at 9:32 a.m., the Saturn V rocket, the most powerful machine ever built, roared to life. A fireball erupted, shaking the ground as it lifted off from Kennedy Space Center. The world watched as the rocket climbed higher, piercing through the sky. For 4 days, they traveled through the emptiness of space, covering 240,000 miles toward the moon. They orbited the lunar surface, checking systems, preparing for the moment that would change history. Then, on July 20th, 1969, Armstrong and Aldrin boarded the lunar module. The descent to the unknown had begun. At first, everything went smoothly. But suddenly, alarms. 1202 alarm, 1202 alarm. The onboard computer was overloaded. No one had seen this error before. Abort the mission? The world held its breath. Mission Control analyzed the data in seconds. Then came the call. Go for landing. But there was another problem. The Eagle was heading straight for a field of boulders. If they landed there, the module could tip over, trapping them forever. With seconds of fuel left, Armstrong took manual control. He searched for a safe spot, guiding the craft like a helicopter, 60 feet, 30 feet, then silence, a pause. Then Armstrong's voice. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. The world erupted in celebration, but one final challenge remained, stepping onto the moon. 6 hours later, the world waited. Armstrong stood at the hatch of the lunar module. Below him, an untouched world, silent and endless. Slowly, he descended the ladder. Every movement was careful, deliberate. Then at 10:56 p.m. ET, July 20th, 1969, his boot pressed into the lunar dust. And then his words echoed across time. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. The world froze. People in living rooms, mission control, and crowded streets all held their breath. Humanity had done the impossible. Aldrin soon followed, describing the surface as magnificent desolation. They planted the American flag, ran experiments, and even took a call from President Nixon. For 21 hours, they walked where no human had ever been. But their mission wasn't over yet. They still had to make it home. After gathering samples and data, Armstrong and Aldrin returned to Eagle. Every system had to work perfectly, or they'd be stranded forever. With a blast of engine fire, they launched off the moon, reconnecting with Michael Collins in orbit. He had been alone for 21 hours, circling the moon, ensuring their way home. On July 24, 1969, Apollo 11 splashed down in the Pacific Ocean. The world had changed forever. Humans had walked on the moon. Apollo 11 wasn't just a mission. It was proof that humanity could reach beyond Earth. It was a reminder that the impossible can be achieved with courage, vision, and determination. But here's a question for you. If you had the chance to explore any planet in our solar system, which one would you visit and why? Would you walk on Mars, dive into Jupiter's storms, or explore the icy oceans of Europa? Have you ever wondered what keeps you on the ground? What makes the planets move? What invisible force rules the universe? For centuries, people had ideas, but one man gave us the answers. This is the story of Isaac Newton. In 1642, on a cold Christmas day, a frail baby was born in Woolsthorpe, England. Isaac Newton. His father had died before he was born, and his mother soon left him behind. He grew up quiet, lonely, and lost in books. At school, Newton was no prodigy. He was often bullied, until one day he fought back. Not with fists, but with brilliance. He built machines, studied the stars, and soon his genius became undeniable. At Cambridge University, Newton arrived in a world still ruled by Aristotle's ancient ideas. But he saw beyond them. Then in 1665, the Great Plague struck, shutting down universities. Newton returned home, 2 years in isolation, and in that solitude he changed science forever. The story of the fallen apple is one of the most famous in history. But was it really the moment that changed everything? Newton never claimed the apple hit his head, but he did say it made him think. As he watched it fall, a question formed. Why do objects always fall straight down? Why not sideways or upward? Then it struck him. What if the same force pulling the apple down was also pulling the moon? What if an invisible force stretched across space, holding everything together? That force was gravity. But gravity was just the beginning. Newton's mind was overflowing with questions. How do objects move? What keeps planets in their orbits? What if light isn't what we think it is? First, he tackled light. For centuries, people believed light was pure and colorless, but Newton's experiments shattered that idea. Using a prism, he discovered that white light was actually a combination of colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Next, he needed a new kind of math, one that could measure change in motion. So, he invented calculus. Yes, the entire branch of mathematics we use today. Newton created it to describe the universe. But his greatest achievement, the 3 laws of motion. An object stays still or keeps moving unless something stops it. Force equals mass times acceleration. In simple terms, more force, more movement. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. With these laws, Newton explained how everything moves, from a falling rock to a speeding cannonball, from an apple on Earth to planets in space. In 1687, he put everything together in his groundbreaking book, Principia Mathematica. It became one of the most important books in history. Newton's laws didn't just explain movement, they gave humanity control over it. Rockets, cars, satellites, everything we use today follows his laws. But success came with a price. Newton had rivals, big ones. One was Robert Hooke, a scientist famous for his work with microscopes. Hooke believed he had already discovered some of Newton's ideas. The two clashed fiercely. Another was Gottfried Leibniz, who had also developed calculus around the same time. Who invented it first? A bitter feud erupted, lasting for decades. Despite the drama, Newton's genius remained unmatched. His discoveries shaped the world, and continue to do so today. Because Newton didn't just see an apple fall, he saw the forces that rule the cosmos. Isaac Newton had uncovered the laws that govern the universe, but his journey didn't end there. His discoveries had shaken the scientific world, but not everyone was ready to accept them. One of Newton's fiercest rivals was Robert Hooke, a brilliant yet controversial scientist. Hooke believed he had played a role in the discovery of gravity and openly challenged Newton's work. He accused Newton of stealing ideas, and their feud became one of the most bitter in scientific history. Newton, deeply offended, erased Hooke's contributions from later editions of his work. But Newton's most famous intellectual battle was with Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Both men had developed calculus independently, but when Newton claimed he had discovered it first, the conflict turned ugly. The Royal Society, of which Newton was a leading member, conducted an investigation. Unsurprisingly, they sided with Newton. This public humiliation ruined Leibniz's reputation, and he died before he could restore his name. Newton, however, was just getting started. In 1696, he took an unexpected turn. He left the world of pure science and entered the world of money and power. He became the warden of the Royal Mint, responsible for England's currency. At the time, counterfeit money was a huge problem, and Newton tackled it with the same precision he used in science. He personally led investigations, tracked down counterfeiters, and even had criminals executed. His methods were ruthless, but they worked. Newton cleaned up England's economy. By 1703, Newton had reached the peak of his influence. He became the president of the Royal Society, the most prestigious scientific institution in the world. His word was law in the world of science. Yet, despite his power, Newton's later years were marked by obsession and secrecy. He became deeply interested in alchemy, the ancient pursuit of turning metals into gold. He wrote over 1 million words on the subject, convinced that hidden knowledge lay beyond the limits of science. Some say Newton's mind, once focused on pure logic, was now chasing myths and mysteries. By the time he passed away in 1727, Newton had changed science, mathematics, and the world itself. He had uncovered the laws that shape reality, redefined our understanding of motion, and given us the tools to explore the universe. Today, every rocket launched, every bridge built, every equation solved, they all follow the rules Newton discovered. Because Newton didn't just explain the universe, he gave us the power to understand it. As Newton grew older, his mind, once fixated on science, drifted toward the unknown. He became obsessed with alchemy, hidden codes in the Bible, and secret laws of the universe. Some dismissed these pursuits as the ramblings of an aging genius. But Newton believed there was more to reality than what science had uncovered. Despite his growing isolation, his reputation remained untouchable. He was knighted in 1705, becoming Sir Isaac Newton, the first scientist to receive such an honor. He lived comfortably, yet he never married, never had children, and left behind only his work. On March 31st, 1727, at the age of 84, Newton passed away in his sleep. He was buried with the highest honors in Westminster Abbey, among kings and queens, a testament to his status as one of history's greatest minds. Centuries after his death, Newton's influence is everywhere. His laws of motion guide rockets into space, his calculus powers modern technology, and his theory of gravity helps us understand black holes and the expanding universe. Without Newton, there would be no space exploration, no satellites, no modern physics. His ideas didn't just explain the world, they reshaped it. Even Einstein, who later refined our understanding of gravity, called Newton a giant on whose shoulders all scientists stand. From the smallest atoms to the largest galaxies, Newton's discoveries still govern reality itself, because he didn't just change science, he changed everything.